Thank you for inviting me for this TED Talk. The last 2 years have brought the world to a standstill. And how? I think the pandemic was not only a health crisis, but it was an economic crisis, a social crisis, but most of all, it closed down schools and colleges. As an educationist, I feel this is something I never expected would ever happen. However, what is interesting to note is that while schools and colleges were closed, learning did not stop. And that, how did it happen? And I think that has been the biggest outcome for education in the pandemic. For education, it has been a perfect storm. A storm between technology on one hand, learning outcomes on the other hand, and third most important, pedagogy. We experienced in our institutions that learning was going on. It was virtual instead of chalk and talk. It was log in and speak. And we realized that even the academic audit showed up that all the students were actually more engaged than before, and that the interaction was much more, and that the learning outcomes went up. That really shot up. And so I'm happy to say that yes, it was the pandemic, but education would never have transformed into technology had it not been for the pandemic. However, it was time for us to reimagine, to reinvent, and to look at how the future is going to be. Because I think what we saw, that the jobs of the future were changing. The World Economic Forum said that 85% of the jobs of the future will have changed. And they said that we would not even know what skills they would require. And the whole emphasis came up on skills. While we were looking at all this, and we were looking at the social crisis growing, the economic crisis growing, and of course, the health crisis growing, we had to see what was it that was going to take education ahead, and how are we going to reinvent education and reimagine it. Gordon Brown said once that you cannot live, a man cannot live without 400 days without food, 80 days without water, and 8 minutes without air. But you cannot live 1 second without hope. And I think what kept the world going and all of us going was hope. And hope that we will now reinvent education into a much larger scope and a much better resilient and agile scope. And so I think all institutions started looking at doing different things. EdTech, something that we used to talk about, but we never experienced it till we faced it. And how quickly EdTech became popular, and how quickly these companies grew, and how quickly it became interesting to see that EdTech companies, online education was being reinvented, and online education and EdTech became the name of the game and became the future. And even when we go back to our physical campuses, I'm sure online education has a great future. And we look forward to even more invention in that. But it was not just reinventing. We had to reimagine, and we had to see that we are able to bring in newer skills and newer outputs in our education system. In future, education, degrees, will they matter? And we used to say, oh my gosh, what would we do without a degree? But yes, today we can see that we may not have a degree, but if I have the right skill, I still get a job. And that's what pandemic showed us. After reimagining, I think the most important thing was, how were we rebooting education? How were we actually working on seeing this education was transforming? And one of the things that we feel was most important here was that education needed to now become a combination of not just the core curriculum, but you needed skills to that, and you needed to add technology to that. So what you wanted to do was, you wanted to have skills education, but led by technology. And I'm seeing this happen all the time, and I'm seeing people use different kinds of technology in their institutions, and I find that very, very interesting. Also, to say that the jobs of the future are changing, how interesting it's becoming. Did you ever think in media and in communication, content will be king? Did you ever feel that today, you must have heard about the Great Resignation, and people are giving up jobs because they want to do jobs out of home, they want to do different things from home. And how do they want to do it? They want to bring in these different skills, and content again is king. And therefore, there are newer jobs coming, a mood analyst, a job of a mood analyst, and you need a sixth sense expert to get into that job. Are we creating the education for the future? Are we creating the jobs for the future? I'm not very sure. But I would say that there have to be we have to really resonate with the present and actually bring in our invention to see that we are able to bring in the key differentiators of skill tech education. And to me, these are, and which I think the new education policy also is giving a lot of emphasis, and that is choice-based courses. And these are to encourage students to do a variety of courses. Do you not need to be, if you're in liberal arts, do you need to just do courses of liberal arts? I think you should be able to do something in sciences, in design, in film, in media, and I think you should be able to do a combination of these courses. So I think the future is going to be choice-based. You need interdisciplinary, you need multidisciplinary, and you need transdisciplinary learning. And I think this is again something that we have to see that we are able to bring in as we go along in the future. You have to also see that we bring in as much industry as possible, experts as possible, so that the domain knowledge is made more practical. Why should I hold a class where I'm talking about how coffee and how the experience of selling coffee and making it something that is not just a cup of coffee but an experience? How do I make that experiential learning and teaching more practical? Why should I hold that class in a classroom? I want to hold that class in a Starbucks, let's say, or in a coffee shop, and let the students gain the real experience of how the customer satisfaction and how customer needs are being met if you're doing a marketing class. So that's very important. Next, I think international exposure. Today we are a global village, and I think we must understand that if it is a global village, we need to see that the world is all one place. And now we can reach out to anyone. I'm so glad to see that so many of our international faculty were able to take many more lectures in our institutions than before, because they had to just come on virtually. Let's carry the hybrid system going. Let's carry the blended system going, virtual and on campus. I think this is something that we should have. So I would still encourage that maybe you don't travel, because today they're talking about carbon emissions, but let's have faculty from anywhere in the world doing joint research with you, doing joint projects with you. And today you can easily reach out to any part of the world. I think another most important thing is, of course, this is where unfortunately the digital divide is something that comes in the way, and we have to resonate and see that we are able to reach those who are not so privileged to have the digital facilities. So sustainability and seeing that we are able to include everyone, make it more inclusive, we have to see that we are able to remove the digital divide. But with that, with the state of technology, I'm sure we will be able to reach out to many more people. And tech, I would think skill tech education will then resonate with even those who cannot afford the education. More than anything else, simulations. Why are we waiting to just go and get the real experiences? I think today technology helps you to bring the simulations to the classrooms. You have to then enhance, of course, hands-on learning along with the simulations. And I think for that, capstones are something that are very, very important. And every industry today is ready to give live projects. And I think education and skill tech education especially should include this. So live projects, internships, apprenticeships, these are important, and they may not be all on campus or on where the industry is. These are also going now virtual. And I'm happy to see I saw a large number of our students doing internships throughout the 2 years of the pandemic. Incubators, I think that is something that I felt very strongly about. Entrepreneurship, why just be a job seeker? I think it's time to be a job creator, and hence entrepreneurship is the future. India has had very strong family businesses, and we must ensure that not just family businesses, but young people have spin-offs from their family businesses and get into newer projects and do different things. I like the way one of our young students, whose father had a transport system for bringing in goods from villages, said, why don't I start a fresh fruit and vegetable market through this transport system and deliver fresh fruits and vegetables at the doorstep? And this was something which was not being done, because earlier the family business only looked at the wholesaling. And today he's running one of the most successful businesses and a young entrepreneurship project. But what I'm very happy to see today in my students is that the entrepreneurial projects are based on empathy. They have understood what India needs. They don't want to separate the two Indias. They want to take the India that cannot afford along with them. And most of their projects are such that are looking at the climate change, are looking at sustainability, are looking at helping those who are not so privileged. And I'm happy to say that that is the future. If the young are so socially conscious, if the young are conscious of ESG, environment, social and corporate governance, India has a beautiful future, because the young Indians are not just looking selfishly at what they want to become, but they are looking at where they can take India. And India has got the advantage that 50% of its population is under the age of 25. We are the youngest country in the world today with the average age of 29. And if these young people, the young people of my country, have these strong values, I think they're going to take this country to an absolutely high level and a different level. I'm very, very proud of my young students. And so I think it's something that we must encourage. Community projects, we must encourage social projects, we must encourage all of them to work together, learn the digital skills that are required, and not just the hard skills, but also the soft skills. Today, communication and collaboration are very, very important, but more than that is also the cognitive skills, high order cognitive skills of critical thinking, creativity, and I'm happy to say that the students are all gaining this. But before I would end, I would like to just say something that I read years ago and I never thought would come true today. This was about 10 years back, and I said, Susan Newman said, digital learners will rebel against intellectual conformity and learning avatars will become commonplace. AI, ML will become a part of the skill tech that we are talking about. And so let teachers, school teachers and governments work together, resonate what the young people want, and let's take this India ahead with reimagining, reinventing, and resonating with the youth.